Camera, mic, all set. Ready to go whenever you are. I have a very special guest today. I'd like to introduce David WOO, a cinematographer and filmmaker based in Osaka and Los Angeles. Welcome, David.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So we'll just get right into it. Can you tell us how you got to where you are today? Like, is this something you always wanted to do, or it just kind of developed as a later path?
Yeah, so I started off, I mean, I would love to say I grew up loving cinema and sort of knew that I wanted to be a filmmaker already by then. But no, I grew up in a pretty modest household, and yeah, filmmaking wasn't even in my mind at that time. But when I got to college, I quickly fell in love with the arts and went into the film production course, specifically the screenwriting trajectory. And then I found out that I really loved documentary work and photojournalism specifically.
Mhm.
Um, so then I went on that path for a while
Right.
and came back into film production, documentary work production. And
Hmm.
then the last few years more towards the narrative
Right.
projects.
So after you graduated, you said you went to film school, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So how did you start getting your first work? And you were, I guess, you were in Los Angeles then, or where were you?
No, I was actually in Tokyo.
Oh, really?
I came here to study abroad for a year and then I just loved it. So after I graduated, I quickly came back to Japan
Hmm.
and I got in-house position as an editor,
Okay.
a video editor. Um, and yeah, and then I slowly climbed my way up. I worked for this company as an editor,
Hmm.
dabbling in motion graphics as well. And then I went on to another production house that specialized more in commercial and higher end projects. And I was an editor, and then I transitioned over to sort of a camera operator then. And then yeah, and then I decided to try to make the leap and become a full-fledged cinematographer. So I started my own company back in LA, and yeah, I just started to, by then I had a pretty good reputation, I hope, in Japan, and we started working since then.
All right. So you got your first work here in Japan, like basically with these companies.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm. So so tell me about like documentary. So how did you've done I've looked at your website and your reel. You've got like an impressive amount of work on there. It's a big variety of like local from local shops, grassroots projects, brand films, documentaries. Like, can you tell me about one of your projects and how how you got into it?
One of my projects and how I got
Uh,
into it.
let's see. How about the brand film SG Airways?
Oh, SG Arrays. That's a pretty recent film actually. So one of my good friends in Osaka introduced me to one of their marketing members at SG Airways, and yeah, the speakeasy bar was fantastic. I
Mhm.
loved what they were going for, and it was just a beautiful location, and I just loved being part of it. And
Yeah,
yeah, we just talked about it and decided to make a documentary style kind of film for them.
mhm. Yeah, it was great, very slick, very nice.
Thank
So on that, your role was a cinematographer director.
you. That's right. For that one, it was a pretty smaller scale. So I was directing and doing the cinematography. I think for that kind of project, yeah, it was pretty smaller scale. So it didn't need that much preparation work.
Hmm. Hmm. All right. Um, so like, how does one go about becoming a cinematographer in Tokyo?
Oh man, I
I
could
mean,
ask you the same question.
yeah, right, right. I know it's that's a pretty big question. So like so for these projects, so for example, so for example, for SG Airways, like, so how do you get in contact with these projects? They reached out to you, or?
I mean, at this point, I have a pretty good, solid reputation here in Tokyo.
Mhm.
Um, and so yeah, it's just, word of mouth really, and some of my colleagues as well. When I can't take on a project, I try my best to recommend other colleagues, other DPs, and they do the same. And we each have our own sort of specialty, I suppose.
Hmm.
My background is more documentary style,
Okay.
documentary work, so I get a lot of those types of projects.
Hmm. Could you tell me about one of your documentary projects?
One of my documentary projects. So it's going around the festival circuit now, but I
Mhm.
worked on I directed and DP'd this documentary about ceramic artist,
Right.
potter,
Right.
uh, Kazuya Ishida, and he specializes in very traditional Japanese Bizen style
Yeah.
pottery.
I saw that
And
on your reel. Very
uh,
nice.
thank you. And so yeah, that was a great project just to sort of get away from a little bit of the corporate and commercial work that sometimes gets blended in with there's been a trend with like the whole branded documentary these
Yeah.
days, and it was nice to just work on a pure documentary. um,
Hmm.
yeah, and that was great.
Right. 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 So yeah, what kind of camera did you use on that one?
For that one, we used a well, I used my own camera, the Ursa Mini, and
Hmm.
also I think it was the Sony A7S III
Hmm.
for that project. Yeah,
Right. 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 Cool.
but
Very nice.
yeah, we shot it over. I mean, it was probably a year actually, just on and off shooting whenever I had the spare time to really go down there to Okayama to shoot.
Wow. Nice. Cool. So let me see here. Mm, I noticed you worked for Artlist. That was a pretty impressive project. Doing a lot of case studies for
Yeah,
creators or for music licensors there.
yeah, that was an interesting one when I was in LA. Yeah,
So I noticed the style was quite like intimate and like it seemed very down to earth and so like we talked maybe a little bit before the interview we talked a little bit about like your style about how to kind of relax the artist and kind of build a rapport and I
right.
guess how did you kind of do that with those guys? Did you sit down and go for beer beforehand or
We didn't have a lot of time, but
right.
definitely before I start shooting, I want to just have a conversation with them, go through sort of our itinerary, and see what they're comfortable and not comfortable doing or showing in that
Mhm.
case. And I mean, ultimately, I wasn't editing or directing it, so ultimately it was the artist's decision
Right.
um, to decide those cuts. But
Hmm.
um, yeah, but it's always a little intimidating when you just show up and you start setting up lights and
Yeah.
stick a camera in someone's face. So at least for me, it's always been frightening.
Oh,
So, but I'm sure the performers are really good at that. But anyway, in any case, yeah, just had a chat with them. I talked with them a little bit. Learned a little bit about their situation living in Los Angeles and San Diego, and uh, you know. One of them I interviewed, had a really cute baby, nice family,
absolutely.
and sort of their dreams as well,
Hmm.
as musicians, and what they like to do, what inspires them, and sort of asking those kind of questions is nice.
Right, right. I guess that leads me into my next question then. So what do you think makes like a good like a good cinematographer or DP? Like what kind of traits? Like
Hmm.
for example, not necessarily traits, but like basically like your time conscious balance with people skills or something like that.
That's a deep question, dude.
Yeah, I mean, like,
um,
the, I mean, I think there are some, I definitely think time is a factor. We can start there.
well, I mean, I think, hmm, I mean, I'm still a sort of kohai DP, so a lot of my senpais probably have a lot of different opinions as well. Um, but I think from my experience, at least working, in this industry for the past like 9 to 9 years, something like that. Um, I think what makes a great DP is a lack of ego. and their willingness to listen. And when I started, I made some terrible mistakes pushing my agenda and my desire over the project or story or even the director's vision. And I think I had to really, get a reality check that, as a DP, my job is to, let go of what I want so much and sort of help work with the rest of the team. Gaffers have an amazing role, a production designer, and work with everyone to sort of propel this story that's being spearheaded by the director or by the client, and get the results that they want. So I think, yeah, losing that ego, listening, um, and yeah, all the technical stuff can be learned later on, I think.
Right, right. So, and like, so I guess that brings me to like, so how do you go about like getting on the same page as like a director? Because like, just like you said, like you have to get rid of the ego and you have to be kind of on the same page and kind of going in their path. So like what do you guys, just sit down and just talk about like your favorite movies or a common interest? And how do you even have time for this?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like a lot of the indie world um, projects that I've been on, time is really lacking to really build that rapport. A lot of times, it's like you sit down once and then, all right, let's go. Let's get this project done. But some of the projects that I really enjoyed was when I had that time to build a rapport with the director or client and see what they really want, and really sort of get into the head and understand what they want out of this project and what they want to express. Or, sometimes some of these stories come from a uh, very intimate, very vulnerable space,
Right.
and I don't want to rush them to just be just to have a project or just to show something that's really visually cool,
Exactly.
um, because it's very, very intimate for whoever is spearheading that project.
Absolutely. Time is definitely a luxury if you can get it right.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
So, David, you have a very like unique situation. Like, you live in Los Angeles. You have to, you do work in Los Angeles and Tokyo. So, what are some of the differences in the industry and in terms of like, how things go there? And
Well, definitely from my experiences working in LA has been, well, the market is huge in LA. It's
Mhm.
incredible. You have some of the smaller scale projects that I'm like, oh, this is great. Like I'm DPing this, and then you have the bigger productions where I'm like, damn, I'm just the PA. you know,
You get
like,
swallowed up.
yeah, it's like, wow, okay. I thought I knew some stuff. I was DPing this commercial back in Tokyo. I have something to show, but
Mhm.
then these projects are just monsters. And I guess Japan also has them, especially from the Japanese side. You have some higher end productions as well. But
Mhm.
from my experience and my opinion, I think it's just so different. The
Right.
scale at which they
Right.
operate and the amount of money. I think the budgets. I think
Right.
Taro talked about that as well. Actually, the
Yes.
budget's just so
Mhm.
much more in LA.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and so I guess yeah, we also with Taro, I asked him about like how did the pandemic affect his work and how's that you know going for you? Like I guess it's so obviously affected everybody.
Yeah, yeah. Work is just a minor thing, right? Like it's really affected people's lives. But yeah, in the beginning, it really, all of my projects were pretty much canceled. I had a feature lined up at that time, a few other commercial projects. Yeah, canceled or postponed. Even now, like I
Mhm.
just received a message that one of these tourism videos that I was going to do, it was supposed to be like 7 to 10 days or something like that, all
Mhm.
around Japan, and the client had cold feet and decided to postpone it. So that was a bummer.
Mhm.
Um, but on the other hand, it's I do have some projects that I think, because foreign productions can't come to Japan, I do get access to those,
Right.
uh, which is kind of an interesting, um, you know, opportunity, silver lining, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. Some good, some bad, I guess, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I was going to ask you. So right now you're working between Osaka and Tokyo. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, I live in Osaka, but my wife and I live in Osaka, but yeah, I mean, I mainly work in Tokyo. I come here like every month, a few times a month even to work. That's because I still have my contacts here in Tokyo when I lived in Tokyo. Um, but
But
yeah,
you prefer to live in Osaka?
I prefer to live in Osaka. It's just a little bit better for my mental health down in Osaka, I think. Uh,
Yeah, I love Osaka. I've been here the whole time. Like I've
yeah,
never ventured out to live in
oh,
any
that's
other
right.
place.
You're in Kansai as well, right?
That's right. Center of the
Yeah,
city.
nice, nice. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's much better down there in terms of just like a Sunday afternoon, just getting a coffee. It feels very different than in Tokyo. Tokyo is very busy, very
It takes
a little stressful.
forever. It takes forever to go anywhere. It's like, hey,
That's
you're gonna meet someone. It's like, okay, I'll be there in 2 hours.
yeah, yeah. It takes forever, and it's also just too busy.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, like, so would you say that like filmmakers have to live in? I mean, obviously you don't. I mean, you don't have to live in Tokyo. You're doing it, right? So
Mhm.
so you can say basically it can be done, right? Just living in, or is it
It's
just
um, it's kind of a challenge, to be honest with you. Going back and forth it's not that. I mean, I'm in a hotel right now. It's not like the Four Seasons or whatever. you know, so it's a lot of hotels. I mean, sometimes I do get lucky and get a pretty decent ryokan or hotel, and other times it's just a business hotel. You know, and it does get old a little bit traveling back and forth. But I think these days, especially with the pandemic, it's really taught us that we can still be connected remotely. And that's been sort of a good thing for people to realize that you don't have to, especially for Japan, I think, I hope, you don't have to sit at your desk for hours a day working overtime. You can just be efficient, clock out, go home and spend time with the family.
Mhm. So, what advice would you give like filmmakers here in Japan or Osaka, Tokyo, who are interested in getting into cinematography and maybe developing a reel or how what should they do first or what should they be focusing on? Should they be focusing on gear? Should they be focusing on networking, or what should they do first?
You mean in Japan specifically?
Yeah, or like someone like someone like myself or someone in the community here who wants to get into cinematography or wants to do what you do basically.
Um, Man, I feel so like humbled to be speaking on behalf of other cinematographers. I don't know how many other
I'm saying just
cinematographers you've
just
interviewed.
your view or experience.
Well, from my experience, I think networking is huge and having a good attitude. In some of my earlier work, my experiences, ego was a big thing as well, and it really damaged um, his relationships. And not only that, but you just kind of come off as sort of I don't want to swear, but like one of those people. I
Exactly.
think networking, being humble, losing your ego, but yeah, networking is so huge. Um, and if it's Japan specific, uh, learn from my mistake. You need to learn Japanese. I think you need to learn Japanese quickly to really network more. Um,
My Japanese leaves a lot to be desired. I need to get more
oh
on it.
man, mine too. Trust me, it's pretty bad. I mean, I can survive, but man, especially the ward office stuff, taxes, man,
My
can't do
favorite place.
that.
That's a whole nother story, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Uh, but yeah,
So networking is one thing.
networking. I wouldn't focus too much on gear, but at the same time, it is important to start out with because it gives you access to just experiment and play. And yeah, I would just buy the camera that you can afford, or or if it's your phone or whatever, and just start shooting. And you'll never get the best equipment. I'm still dreaming. I keep upgrading my cameras, and each time I think, okay, this is gonna be it, and then there's like a version 2 that comes out next year, and then
Especially with Blackmagic design.
Blackmagic, yeah, Sony. I used the Venice, and it was great, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna buy that. And then the FX9 came out, and I was like, whoa, wait a minute, this is like a budget version. And then FX6 came out, and I was like, oh, okay. And then like, it just goes crazy. And the Alexa LF that I have yet to use, but that's a beautiful camera as well. But
Do you use the RE Alexa Mini, I guess, for some projects?
yeah, the Mini, yeah,
Wow, what's that like?
um, yeah. I mean, it's just a camera.
Right, right, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're going to be talking about gear for a little bit here, I think like a lot of the new cameras coming out now, of course, they have like IBIS and they have like auto
Oh,
focus detection, all this kind of stuff, and and it does seem good in some, it does seem advantageous, but at the same time, uh, if you're using a camera like the RE Alexa, like all that's it's basically a box, right? With like a sensor. Like there's no like auto focus detection, or is there on those cameras? Like basically it's all just manual focusing and etc. Right?
yeah, yeah.
So I think a lot
I
of
mean,
like these like these days cinematographers are coming up with all this technology like autofocus detection, and then maybe they get a job where they have to use a camera like that, like a legitimate cinema camera, and then oh my god, I don't know how to do focus and I don't know how to do this because I have all these extra tools.
hmm, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it's really interesting, like IBIS was a thing back then, and then it started off with, I think it was started off with the Sony cameras and the mirrorless cameras, maybe. But anyway, yeah, there's so many tools, but it boils down to what does your project need and what logistic. Well, for me, I think art, visually, what do you need? Do you really need that nice highlight roll off that the Alexa sensor does give? And to be fair, the Blackmagic cameras these days have pretty nice highlight roll offs as well. Or do you need something that's more versatile, like one of those mirrorless cameras that you can get you access to these locations without being kicked out? That you can put on one of these smaller gimbals without breaking your back. If you don't have an operator, like many times, sometimes, yeah, many times, if I don't have an operator, do I really want to go out and rent an Alexa and kit it out, or am I happy with just a mirrorless and shoot it? And it depends. It depends on the projects. Yeah.
Sure, 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 sure. Yeah, so getting back to your reel, I noticed you worked for Amazon, Netflix, some massive companies, big projects there. Um, how about your Netflix project, Little Miss Sumo?
Yeah, I didn't direct that. I was just a
Yeah,
camera
yeah.
operator on that project. But yeah, it was a fun project,
Mhm.
very cool documentary, very cool subjects.
Yeah,
And
interesting story.
yeah, yeah.
Lady trying to become a sumo wrestler.
hmm
Hmm.
And I love those kind of stories, where you're just getting in the space and environment and learning more about the subjects. And that's one of the beautiful things about documentary work, well, not branded documentary work anyway. But yeah, you just can be really honest with your subjects. You get to follow them, learn more about, what you initially came into the project to
Right.
do.
Hmm.
And yeah, I love it.
So, what was the scale of that project? I mean, I just, of course, when you say Netflix, kind of, obviously you think, wow, it's huge, but like, how was like the actual, what was the reality of like that project? And
Well, for that project in particular, it wasn't that big of a scale, because there was a lot of logistical costs for it. I think the director was UK based. So he had to come here and to shoot this, and we had to figure out a lot of the logistics. How do we get operators, and how do we, or I was one of the operators. How do we get us to the locations. How do we get, you know, how many days do we have to shoot this? How do we even get access to some of these you know, kids, right? Um, and permission, shooting permissions, and all of that. So there's a lot of logistics to it, but in terms of, if you're talking about sort of the scale in terms of the production itself, it wasn't that big.
Right. And do you remember how long did it take?
Don't really remember. It was a few trips. Yeah, it wasn't just it was, and each time was like 3 4 days, I believe.
Right.
Yeah,
Cool. Cool. So as a cinematographer, I guess obviously lighting is a huge thing, and
yeah, yeah.
so like a lot of people maybe sometimes lights are the last thing they pick up, but whereas they almost should be first. So what's your like lighting style? I guess that differs on each project.
Uh,
And are you like I guess it depends on your role in the project, whether you're the cinematographer or the camera operator or
right, right. Well, my approach to lighting, I really try my best to previs everything, and sort of map it out in pre-production as best as I can before I even show up on set. Or if I'm, lucky, I would get pre-lights days and sort of map it out with my gaffer. Um, but in general, I think because of my documentary background, I like very quick minimal lighting. I like practicals a lot. I am not afraid to have shadows underexposed. Um, and yeah, yeah, I, I mean, depends on the project, of course. If we need beauty lighting or if it's for a certain commercial, we need something else. But I do like the moodier lighting styles.
so you like maybe just light like a big master and then come in for coverage, maybe just add a little bit here and there.
Yeah,
Something like that.
exactly. Yeah,
Mm.
exactly. If there's more of a vibe I'm going for, I would light for that, and then sort of just highlight certain places when I get in tight. Yeah.
Right. Mm. Good. So and like so what kind of advice would you give people for like when it comes to like lighting and stuff like that? Like just basically I guess it really depends on their gear and budgets, I
Mm,
guess.
I think it's an interesting time. Um,
Mm.
some of my mentors and senpais, um, you know, they of course still use like light meters and they're just so in tune with quantifying the light in a way that's also very, I don't know if I'm making any sense, but they're basically able to see the image with light, and calculate it without really guessing. And some
Right.
projects, and I'm still trying to learn that myself, as well. And a light meter, of course, definitely helps, to slow things down and let you think a little bit more than just, because there is a tendency, on some projects, even for myself, that I'm just like, all right, let's light it this way, trial and error kind of way. And like I have an idea, but then it doesn't
Mhm.
really work. And then I have to do something else. But I think some of my mentors, they really think about it through, and calculate it. And when they're shooting it, it basically just needs a couple of tweaks here and there. And sorry, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but I would say,
No, I know it definitely.
yeah, I
Hmm.
would say, I guess, see what mood you're trying to create. What does the light, is it motivated lighting? And make sure that you're able to quantify it.
Right.
I don't know if that's the right word. Yeah.
So sum up the situation and try to get into kind of the practice of actually not just try to take the guesswork out of it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
And I guess that takes, like you said, you're still developing that kind of skill, right?
yeah. Like, if we're, shooting something at like, I don't know, 5.6, and you need to increase the light or something like that, or you have to open up your lens, and you know your options, rather than, okay, why is it dark now? What can I do? But my mentors, they really understand, okay, these are my options when you do this, and they have it down so well that it's almost second nature to them, and they can make those decisions in an artistic way, rather than trying to problem solve it.
Hmm.
you know
Exactly. I've always thought like maybe you can give me your opinion on this. I've always thought like a good way to practice this would be just to get like a film camera like analog,
Mhm,
and get a light meter
mhm.
and take notes on your shots and just go around shooting and take notes. And I think you could probably learn a lot from that.
Yeah,
Just
definitely.
just a
Yeah.
still camera
Mhm.
and just load it up with film, get like maybe a Nikon FM2 or something like that, like
Yeah.
like the one sitting back there.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I mean, on the other side of the spectrum, though, like, not just the sort of technical calculations of light, but also understanding what light represents in a certain scenario, in a situation, in the scene. How does this light, this lamp, for example, next to me, how does it make you feel when it's in this shot? What is the light
The meaning, right?
doing? Yeah, what is the meaning? What is it doing to my skin? Um, what does it do to this room? And sort of understand the motivation behind it as well, and finding those moments.
Hmm. Yes, I'm teaching a film studies course at university right now, and it's kind of my first year teaching film studies. So it's
Nice.
I'm my students obviously are Japanese, and so you got the English, got the communication barrier as well, and but it's interesting. It's fun, and I like doing it. And speaking of lighting, like lighting or anything else that I try to teach my students, it's like I try to kind of not get too wrapped up in the technical side
Hmm.
and more about like what you just said about like if we have this type of lighting, like high key lighting, low key lighting, what does it mean for the shot and for the
Yeah.
story? I always try to
Yeah.
like make them well, like the course is you'll get your grade by giving a good opinion about the meaning,
Yeah, for sure.
right?
I mean, motivated lighting. Yeah, that's something that is really important, in my opinion. That's one of the reasons why it's really difficult for me to get into music videos, or to shoot music videos, because a lot of it is sort of just what is visually appealing, and not so much story driven. Um,
Not documentary at all. Not
yeah,
documentary at all.
I mean, it's fun. I've worked on a few, and but it's like, oh, why am I doing this? But I guess it turns out great. It looks great, but I don't know what I'm doing.
It's like candy. It's like candy store lighting. It's just you're just oh, I'll put like a light tube here, a light tube
Yeah,
there. I'll put a light under the sofa.
yeah, yeah. And it works, I guess. People like it. So, but
Right, right.
yeah, it's hard for me to get into that.
So, getting back to advice for filmmakers, do you think that like both you and I went to film school. So, do you think, I guess, a valid question is, do you think, uh, people need to go to film school?
Oh no, absolutely not. I
Mhm.
mean, man, my film school was pretty horrible. If
Oh,
I'm
really?
being honest with you, it was pretty bad. But it's one of those things where you get what you put into it, I guess. But give or take. But yeah, you can absolutely learn everything online these days. No need for film school. I think the important thing for film school, though, is probably networking. That would be the biggest benefit I see for going to film school. Um, yeah, but then I don't know, maybe just go to parties or something. uh, yeah, it's hard to say, but at the same time, you are in a situation where you're networking, you're working with your classmates who eventually will be are interested in the same industry, working on these projects, and you guys can sort of advance together, which is really great. Um, yeah, and there's something about that which is really beneficial.
Yeah, exactly, for sure. Because I have a lot of like classmates that are doing some wonderful stuff now. Like a lot of them,
Yeah,
some of them gone to on
awesome.
to other schools. I have one
Mhm.
classmate. She went to AFI in Los
Oh
Angeles,
yeah, yeah, great, great. Yeah, it's a great
and I have
school.
another guy that he made this short film and it's like did well on the festival circuit, and now he's got agents in Los Angeles and all this kind
Nice,
of
nice.
stuff. And
That's
yeah,
great.
and some people are, and they weren't all like, I had different disciplines, right? Like colorist and all these things. For me, I had a great experience in film school. I'm not sure if I had to go or not, but I had a great experience. Like I made it, I put the most into it. I said, if I'm going to go to film school, it might as well be a great experience. So I decided to go to Europe. I went to Scotland,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
to
that's
the
right. Yeah.
University of Edinburgh, and it wasn't just films, and it wasn't just like all like I could say film related. It was like very half was academic
Hmm.
and half was practical.
Yeah,
So we had to like do papers and all this. I was a bit surprised by that when I first got there. I was like, "What? I got to do papers?"
yeah,
But after looking back, it was great. Like because the papers that we did kind of informed the script and all this kind of stuff. And I was in the master's program, and my program was actually a master's degree in film directing. So I'm just like, yeah, okay, I want that. Like that's what I want that title. But
nice.
and so us, the master students, we worked with the undergrads. So the undergrads, so for our projects, so we worked with the first, second, and third years. The fourth years were a bit too busy because they were graduating, they had to make their own projects.
Hmm.
So us master students, they were our crew for our projects, and they also got credit for their working on different parts of our projects for their assignments as well.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a great, great time, and like those are the opportunities that I wish I had more of. Because in university, I came to Tokyo actually, and I jumped right in hands on rather than sort of going through that process where I'm, collaborating with my classmates. So yeah, I would say definitely take the time to work with your classmates, um, and yeah, just advance together and work on each other's projects. Yeah, that's a good
Right.
thing.
But like basically, the good thing with you is you went to school there in Tokyo, right? And then you got right to work right away, right?
Originally, my university was in Philadelphia, my hometown.
Oh, okay.
Um, yeah, and then I went to Tokyo to study abroad, and yeah, I went back to graduate, and then after that, I went back to Japan again. But my but in Japan, it wasn't. There's no films. I didn't go to a film school in Japan,
What was your
so
program in Japan?
the program in Japan was just communications.
Oh, okay. So
So
finding Japanese and
yeah, yeah, Japanese and sort of the basic sort of academics, really. Um, so when I graduated, it was a lot of just, okay, I want to get into film, but my classmates aren't really in the same industry. So back in Philly, like my classmates were doing their thing, and I was like, oh man, I'm in Tokyo basically by myself. But then I luckily got to work. Um,
uh,
yeah.
well, it definitely sounds like you made the best of it.
Well, thank you, thank you.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, it's definitely been a challenge, but yeah, it was a good experience.
Right. So I guess my next question is, what are your like narrative ambitions? Like, do you have any ambitions? Like, I mean, I've looked at your reel, or I looked at your website, and most of your work seems like kind of quite short form, or like some longer as well, I guess, obviously. But
Mhm.
do you have any plans to get into the narrative game?
Yeah, I've been really trying hard to get into the narrative game, especially feature narratives. I mean, I've done a few uh, feature documentary work, so I'm quite proud of that. But feature narratives as a DP, uh, yeah, I'm still trying to get more of those. Uh, yeah, so that's my goal, to get a decent script,
Right.
work with a decent director, who shares the vision, and yeah.
Mhm. So have you ever tried to write any of your own scripts, or you're more like, uh, I mean, from a
I
cinema?
still have a yeah, I still have a script from the college days when, because it was like a screenwriting course. But I don't I feel like that script, it came from a very well-known place. So I don't want to just shoot it without the proper preparation or proper finance
Right.
financing for it.
So when you
So I'm
when
still
you do it,
saving
you
it.
want to do
Yeah.
it right.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so speaking of scripts, so if like when not necessarily, I guess, so what would you be looking for in a script? Not your script, but if you wanted to shoot a feature, like what attracts you to a script these days? I guess, and that probably changes all the time as
Yeah,
like,
yeah, man. I mean, particularly when I was in LA, like I've received so many like really bad scripts, man. But
and it takes
sometimes I want
time,
to,
right, to read those. It takes a long time sometimes, especially if they're
yeah,
bad.
yeah. But it's yeah, some of these scripts are really bad. But at the same time, like I guess what I look forward to is, um, like how can how's my relationship with the director? I guess I read the script, and if the director is somebody I really want to work with, and I'm willing to give them the benefit of doubt, if they're able to um, visualize the script in a way that I would be proud of. But if it's a first time director, or if it's a director I'm working with for the first time, and the script is really bad, or I guess what I'm looking for is uh, something I can relate to, or something that is written in a way that's very meaningful. Um, I mean, it shouldn't be uh, a script where it's just a bunch of nonsense going on, So I look forward to scripts that are written really, uh, I don't know if that's the right word, eloquently, or in a way that is very impactful to me. Like there are some scripts that I read that I'm just like, on my phone or iPad, and I'm like, oh, I'll just, take a quick peek at it, and then just stand there for like the next, 30, 40 minutes reading the whole thing. And I'm like, oh, geez, I'm just in my pajamas reading this.
So it draws you in.
Yeah, yeah, something that draws me in. Yeah, that's great.
Mm.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool, cool. And so, like, I guess, like you said, you've read a lot of bad scripts, and from when you're in your
Yeah.
LA days. So, what are some like mistakes that people commonly make on, with their scripts and just their whole projects, like just the way they approach things? Like, I'm sure you've done a lot of projects, and you've seen a lot of good, you've seen a lot of bad. Is there any like common things that, like, I mean, one thing you mentioned was like ego, or
Ego, yeah. Ego, some people are really attached to their script, which is, it's their baby. I guess that's okay. But I guess, some of the things, it's like just too much exposition. Yeah, just too much of that, and you're sort of telling me how to feel rather than letting me sort of experience it and feel it naturally. I think that's one of the things that really turns me off when I read a script, is just like, okay, I get it, but I don't feel that way, you know. Whereas some of the scripts that are better, I'm reading it, I'm like, oh, okay, I feel this way. I understand what's going on in this character's mind, and the situation that this character is in, and sort of the challenges, and I feel empathy for the character, rather than saying like, oh, he's feeling this way,
right?
man, yeah, I don't need that.
So yeah, that's good advice, actually. Yeah, very very good. Yeah, so like, and some scripts, I guess, when you read them, like, obviously sometimes people feel different things, but as long as you feel something,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah,
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 that's great. All right, what else I had to ask you? I think that's about it, David.
awesome.
Um, so I guess we'll end off there, David. Thanks. And so thanks a lot for taking the time to be on my show, David.
Oh, thank you. It was an
And
honor, and I hope my perspective on certain things is helpful to some people.
Definitely, definitely. I'm sure it will be. So just lastly, I'd just like to give you the opportunity to say, like, you could just say what you're working on, or like any projects coming up if you can, or where people can find your work, like social media accounts or things like that.
Um, yeah, I haven't really been posting so much lately, but yeah, I mean, they can always find me at like my website,
Mhm.
davidwu.com.
Yeah, yeah. I'll post links after in
Oh,
the
thank you,
description.
thank you.
No problem. And I guess in terms of what you're working on right now, I guess you're working right now. You
Right, right.
so
But I have yet to work on to DP on a narrative feature that I'm in love with. So yeah,
maybe we'll
so
have to get
please,
together. Maybe
yeah,
maybe maybe we're the team.
yeah. There we go. We bring Taro back as well. There you go.
Taro
You have it too.
producing,
Yeah,
UDP,
yep,
I'll direct.
yeah. There you go.
Let's get it done.
Sounds good.
All right, David. So good luck up there in Tokyo, and
Thank you.
take care. Thanks again.
All right. Thanks, David.